Good morning, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. We wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The Silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you tuning in today, we welcome you in. Some of you who are a little bit older might remember the Satanic Panic. That was during the 80s. People were convinced Satanists were everywhere. Now, the past is a different time, a different place, and there were different priorities. While how am I going to say this? While the idea of immigrants and, multiculturalism was seen as beneficial, we were looking for the new enemy. The Soviet Union was collapsing. The world was changing. Computers were being introduced. People needed something to fear. And one of the famous journalists at the time, Geraldo Rivera, came on the news with his very, very popular talk show and announced there were over 1 million Satanists in the United States. In fact, a quote from him was, "There's surely one living in your town with you right now." Oh my God, Satanists are everywhere. Dungeons and Dragons came out at the same time, and with some of its covers, they were pretty provocative. So they were able to point to that and say, "Hey, see, this is part of the cause of the Satanic Panic. Over here, see this piece of music," and there's so many types of music coming out in the 70s and 80s. Punk music is the catalyst for the Satanic Panic. It's drawing our children and exposing them to ideals. Yeah, anarchy in the UK is supposedly satanic. No, it's a political statement. But we get this. Every so often, something comes up to challenge us. At present, we're struggling with race relations because we can clearly separate the other from ourselves. And the Satanic Panic did the exact same thing because they were separating an invisible force that nobody could pay attention to or keep track of because it seemed to mimic the exact same things everybody else was doing, but it was subversive at the same time. There were some studies made, hypnosis on young children. Now, hypnosis is a valid diagnostic tool. It's something that psychologists, psychiatrists, psychologists, and that whole group use therapeutically. But it also must be used within great controls and with great risk. People generally are happy to tell you what you want to hear under hypnosis. If you want an example, do you know somebody who sleepwalks? Chances are you do. I don't sleepwalk, but I have been known to have conversations in my sleep. My father could get up, go downstairs, toast a sandwich, eat it, and go back upstairs, and you can have a conversation the entire time. And he was always in a fabulous mood. And I learned this because I would be saying, "Hey, Dad, can I go with so-and-so on Friday to do whatever nonsense was important back then?" And he would agree, "Yeah, you should do that. That sounds good." And then when the day came, I'd like, "But I told you about this." "No, you didn't." So I can tell you it's a very fluid state of consciousness. Now that's called hypnagogic. And hypnosis, especially for a child who's always wanting to please, they don't want to be in trouble. If they're in a hypnotic state, which is a suggestible state, they can recall all sorts of crazy things if you just ask them a few leading questions. But this was being used as hardcore evidence. "Oh, my child was ritually abused because of my next door neighbor's cult." While you were the one asking the questions, "Were you abused?" "Yes." "Was it the next door neighbor?" "Yes." And the child's not truly conscious of what they're doing. Now, in the years since, Satanism has come out of the closet. Is that the right terminology? They don't proselytize. They don't get into what their faith is, but they will tell you about it. Some people are direct descendants of Anton LaVey, while others are what's a nice way to say, like those Christians that go for holidays but don't get involved with it. Well, Satanists are the exact same way. They just happen to agree that that is their particular way of worshiping. Now, we have the exact same thing with the 10,000 different religions that are in this country these days. I live not far from a Buddhist temple and several Hindu temples. You know what? They don't bother me. But some people it bothers a great deal. It would be possible to construct a mythology where these people who don't look like us, don't talk like us, are coming in and taking over our convenience stores and our truck driving jobs and stuff like that. They're also taking over lawyer jobs and other, things that clearly show they're smart, intelligent, adaptable people. I don't know if I could move to Japan and become a lawyer. Not because I'm intellectually inferior, but there's a heck of a lot of steps to becoming from A to Z. And immigrants are coming over here. They have different traditions. One of my friends, I believe she was Pakistani. I could be wrong, and if so, I apologize. Her mother cooked a dish, and she was not allowed to cook it in the house because it used so much garlic and spices and stuff, they would never get the smell out of there. But it was tradition for them. They all looked forward to it, but they had to send the mother out to the garage to cook. Does that mean it's evil or disgusting or anything? Heck no. Probably tastes fantastic. I don't know. We weren't close enough friends for her to do anything like that. But this is how rumors start. It starts off with finding something that you don't understand or don't agree with and attaching all the worst possible ideas to. Satanism is real. People do worship deities other than our Creator. And for what I've seen, it's not as bad as people say. Now, I don't buy into it myself, but if I go to the other side and they say, surprise, Cthulhu rules here, even though Cthulhu's not real, I wouldn't be terribly upset. Okay. Tell me which way we go around and tell me how to get along, and let's do this. But there's such excuse me. There's such, I don't know if I want to call it a virulent hatred, but this virulent willingness to hate somebody else based on their culture. Now we know how far that goes back in history. Even the Bible mentions God tells them you must wipe out all of the Hittites, and they only murder most of the Hittites, so God gets angry at them. Well, you might call that the original Satanic Panic, because the Hittites were worshiping, gods other than the original state of Israel's pantheon. So they're told to wipe them out. And if you read my book, The Secrets of Solomon, that actually had pretty dire consequences for the Jewish people. So why is it so easy to get people up in arms? I'm still sticking with the Satanic Panic, although generalizing it to people not liking other people. Because it's kind of natural for humans to blame the suspicious outsider. In your tribe, if somebody new came through, you're going to be watching them and paying attention to them, make sure that they don't do something crazy. I don't know, like cook their food over fire instead of eating it raw. And this does go back a long ways, but we also know humans were accepting others in, whether through marriage, whether through, becoming part of the tribal rights, whatever you want to call it. The Satanic Panic was not new. Heck, it stuck around for about 1,500 to 2,000 years. When there were no Satanists available, they made them up. That's why you had witch trials. That's why you had all those terrible things people did to each other. And like I said, when you generalize it to the modern population, it's why racism still has a hold over us. Because we can't accept other people who might believe differently than us. And I'm not talking believing in the flat earth or a hollow earth or something like that. I'm talking about people who believe they should worship on Saturdays, like Seventh-day Adventists, or Sundays, like Christians. Oh, those weird Seventh-day Adventists, we don't talk about them much. The Satanic Panic was the prototype for post 9/11 problems. Because after 9/11, more people started coming into North America from all over the place. And I'm going to tell you, I'm a horrible judge of what people are. My next door neighbor is Jamaican. But you know what? Her skin color is kind of not white, not black. She's got zero accent because she was born not too far away from where we live now. And we get along great because I chose to be open to that experience. She pulled up, I helped her move in, along with her boyfriend and all sorts of other people. I made friends. Whereas one door down from her, really creepy people that different people are there at different times. There's a strong father figure. I don't know how he's related to the family. And the son goes out all hours of the day and night with people that just pull up to the driveway, sit and wait for him to come out and get them. I don't think that's a satanic panic thing. I think that's a person that has something in their basement that they're producing and they don't want anybody to know. I'm going to be vague because I don't want to accuse anybody. Maybe the son is really popular and maybe he's got to do sorts of stuff all sorts of day and night. I don't know. And I'm assuming it's the son, which I shouldn't do. I'm suspicious of them, but at the same token, just don't interact with them. It's not a problem. So whether they're mafia, drug dealers, Satanists, highly doubt Satanists, maybe Kali followers, but definitely not Satanists. But we still have this psychological structure in our mind that we are mistrustful. I enjoy giving people an opportunity, and I always will. Somebody new, hey, you have the opportunity to fail. Then once you fail, then I'll start looking into you. The satanic people, the satanic panic people were the opposite. We know you exist. We're coming for you. You know, it's actually illegal to charge somebody with being of a different religion. And it was even back in the 1980s. So these people got themselves all worked up over nothing. Now, never really dealt with a true Satanist. A few fringe Satanists, but nobody who would actually, you know, the ones that I met were basically indistinguishable from the punk rockers or the mods that I grew up with. And they were perfectly nice people. I don't think there's any Satanist in my immediate area, but again, I don't care what you do inside of your house as long as it's between consenting adults. But we had a whole culture that people are forgetting about, and they're claiming now that racism and everything has always been. Yes, I'm not saying people were never racist, but I'm showing that there's a lot of hateful culture that's just out there right beyond sniffing distance, let's say. And if you were accused of being a Satanist, didn't matter whether you were good, bad, illegal, whatever it was, people wanted to give you that evil eye and say, here's sanctioned hatred that I can expose. I can go and yell at you that you're a Satanist and there's nothing you can do. God, I'm glad that that's out of our culture at present. But as soon as we get stable, trust me, it'll be back. In the 80s, culture was pretty stable. We knew who the good guys were. We knew who the bad guys were. Now with terrorists and stuff like that, people, well, even foreign nations conducting terror attacks and missile attacks and bombings and all sorts of stuff like this, it's tough to tell who the enemies are. But let me tell you this, generally if they came to this country, they're probably not your enemy. Generally if they're in this country, they're probably not your enemy. Especially if they're not doing any of those crazy things that I mentioned earlier. Terrorist bombings, kidnappings, all that stuff. Kidnappings do happen. Bombings are rare, but we can usually put them down to a secular group or an extreme fundamentalist religious group, but not one that hasn't been here for about 300 or 400 years. This is not new people inventing this stuff. This is old people recycling the same stuff. So with that, we wish to thank you for joining us on the Silverlight Show. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, because sharing is caring. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Don't forget to click the notification down below, because that way you'll get notified every single time we release a new episode. And we hope you have a fantastic day.